In July of 1876, the United States was celebrating its centennial. Across the country, massive public displays reflected a deep sense of national invincibility, a belief that the American story was one of continuous, inevitable expansion. But late on the night of July 5th, that confidence met a harsh reality in Bismarck, Dakota Territory. The steamboat Far West arrived carrying 50 wounded soldiers and the first accounts of a disaster. Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer and 5 companies of the 7th Cavalry had been wiped out at the Little Bighorn. The next morning, as news began to move through the Bismarck telegraph office, the national mood shifted from celebration to shock. Over the next 24 hours, 50,000 words were tapped out to the East Coast, detailing a defeat that no one in Washington had thought possible. The news created an immediate information vacuum. With the public demanding answers, the government found itself in a race to explain the failure. However, any official version of the story would have to navigate a landscape of deep political divisions that had been forming for months. Earlier that spring, Custer had been in Washington, not as a military hero, but as a witness. He had been summoned to testify before a committee investigating a massive corruption scandal involving the Secretary of War, William Belknap. Custer's testimony was explosive. He provided evidence of a kickback scheme involving frontier trading posts, the very places responsible for arming the tribes. Most damaging of all, his testimony implicated President Ulysses S. Grant's own brother, Orville. Grant's reaction was swift. He stripped Custer of his command, only allowing him to join the Sioux campaign at the last minute as a subordinate to General Alfred Terry. To the White House, Custer was no longer just an officer. He was a political opponent who had publicly embarrassed the administration. By the time the Far West reached Bismarck, Custer's death had transformed him from a vocal critic into a silent one. His reputation was now a resource that the administration could use to manage the fallout of the defeat. General Terry's official report from the field was delayed, creating a window for rumors and unofficial accounts to take hold of the national conversation. During this delay, a confidential message from Terry reached General Philip Sheridan in Philadelphia. In this private dispatch, Terry took a specific stance. He blamed the disaster on Custer's failure to follow his orders. This confident that it was leaked to the Philadelphia Inquirer. Before a formal investigation could even begin, the narrative of a disobedient Custer was being distributed to the public on an industrial scale. The leak effectively narrowed the scope of the disaster. By centering the story on one officer's tactical choices, the Army could avoid a messy public debate over broader strategic failures or the systemic corruption Custer had denounced just months before. To see how this narrative was constructed, we have to look at the primary artifact, the actual orders Terry gave Custer on June 22nd. Terry writes that it is impossible to give you any definite instructions, noting his confidence in Custer to impose precise orders that might hamper your action when nearly in contact with the enemy. These orders provided Custer with broad discretion. Yet in September, President Grant told the New York Herald that he regarded the battle as an unnecessary sacrifice of troops, officially endorsing the claim that Custer had overstepped. This created a lasting historical contradiction. The government publicly condemned Custer for a tactical decision that his written instructions had explicitly authorized him to make. By late 1876, the administration's version of events seemed settled. Custer's blame was the official record, and the political scandal that preceded the battle was fading from view. But Elizabeth Libbie Custer refused to accept this institutional verdict. She knew her husband was being used to shield the powerful, and she began a campaign to dismantle that narrative. She provided selective access to George's letters to a biographer who painted him as a hero, and she was a driving force behind the 1879 Reno Court of Inquiry, which shifted the focus onto the actions of Custer's surviving officers. The Grant administration won the immediate race to define the defeat in 1876, but Libbie Custer spent the next 5 decades winning the war for how the story would be told in the history books. If artifacts over orthodoxy history is your thing, this is Crazy Horse Chronicles. Subscribe and keep questioning the baseline. This video was made with the assistance of AI.